So you're talking about being almost slow with your load, Kevin, your load swing, and then
Patient,
Mhm.
not slow, because slow breeds lazy. Patient.
They call me the Iceman.
I tried to make the world shrink to about a 3-yard by 3-yard little spot. I couldn't even really see the front line in front of me. It was my holder and me and my few little steps.
For you guys that may know Brett but don't know, I mean, the guy knows what he's talking about.
Man, y'all order my dog's book, man. The Kicker's Bible.
Roll another one 'cause I'm winning in my photo.
Welcome, specialists, coaches, dads of kickers, moms of punters, relatives of long snappers, and dogs that chat kickoffs to the Iceman Podcast. It's the show with cold questions and even cooler guests. And I'm your host, as always, Brett Arkelian. I'm joined today by two outstanding guests. Well, really, we've got a co-host here and a guest. Give it up for Kyle Stelter, who is on again the podcast. He's a professional snapping coach. Has spent time playing professionally, snapping professionally with the Sacramento Mountain Lions and the New York Jets. Has had 56 pro snappers, including 4 of our guests now that have been on the podcast. Kyle, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me back. Good luck keeping me off.
That's right. That's right. Now in the other corner, all right, we have a Fresno State legend, all right, someone who has played professional ball. He multiple records, including the highest single season combined field goal and PAT record at 98%. He's 4th in all-time scoring in Fresno State history with 373 points. Was the all-time leading scorer, the highest single season field goal percentage holder, the longest field goal at 58 yards, also a game winner there, and the most consecutive field goals in a season. He had 19 field goals in a season. Give it up for 2-time Lou Groza Award semifinalist, Kevin Goessling. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man. I appreciate you coming on. I know we've been in touch for a while. Now, a little personal, on a personal note, I grew up in the area. I went to Buchanan High School, and I played. I was getting into my career about the time that you were playing. So definitely saw you kicking some big games. I've seen the kickoff steps. I won't lie. I bit from your kicking step. You take on your kickoff step, you take like kind of a jab step and then a high knee. Well, I kind of got into doing 2 high knees. I almost looked like I was marching for some reason. But I definitely bit that in my kickoff style. So I will definitely give credit to you. I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Now, you've been training a lot of kickers. Let me get into this, and me and Kyle got some good questions here teed up for you. But your heavy hitters section, all right? We always like to start off with the heavy hitter, brought to you by the Kicker's Bible. You can find that on Amazon. Tell us, you spent nearly 4 years as a starting kicker at Fresno State. What is the biggest misconception either about playing at Fresno State or playing at that high of a level for so long?
All right, so it's probably more true now with NIL and the way transfers happen and just the amount of leash you have going into a college program. But in my not knowing how recruiting worked, I was telling coaches when I was in high school, I just wanted a redshirt for a year and start for 4, and it was simple as that. And most places that wasn't going to be the case. Fresno had an opportunity. That's really what I wanted. My goal was the NFL. And I wanted to get a great education along the way, and Fresno offered that. It didn't come until probably late in my senior year. If I had those goals today, I would find myself not playing college football. So, a lot of it is the misconception is opportunity. It doesn't take many years of opportunity in college to get a shot in the league. Likewise, it doesn't take a whole lot of opportunity to get a shot in college, but you have to do what you can with it. So with that said, is playing at a mid-major like a Fresno State, you got to be just as good, if not better, than any other starting specialist, in your conference that you're trying to play into. If you're not better, why choose you? So with that said, It's like playing 1AA, 2, Division 3. When you get to the NFL, all divisions are represented. So there's dudes at all levels. So the bottom line is, it doesn't matter how good the guy in front of you is. How good can you be, and how hard are you willing to work to get yourself there? And if that's your focus, then you might have a shot.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you guys both know from playing, getting tryouts at the NFL level and getting shots there, that's what it takes. You have to be elite at your level. Talk to us a little bit, Kevin, about how did you get into being a kicker, and what was your process into landing Fresno State or ending up at Fresno State? You hit on the recruiting process a little bit.
Yeah, so I didn't start playing football till high school. I was a soccer guy with more of a baseball background. I took baseball hitting lessons as a high school kid, and I still talk to my baseball hitting coaches to this day. They're swing coaches, right? It's like a golf coach. Now they're pro scouts, and we share a lot of similar concepts, and it's a lot of fun. But a lot of my background in kicking comes from baseball, because when you take the idea of taking the knob of the bat and driving it at the inside of the baseball, just like hitting, now you see your kneecap, or the inside muscle on the inside of the kneecap, as the knob of the bat. To me, from there, it's pretty self-explanatory. The rest of it becomes baseball. But a lot of kicking is all about checkpoints and cues. And so with where I got into kicking was those two sports. So I played some high school football at a very competitive high school in Orange County called Servite High School, in the Trinity League with St. John Bosco, Mater Dei, Santa Margarita, J. Sarah, Orange Lutheran. It's top-notch competition. But we didn't really have a huge kicking culture at the school. So a lot of it was, autonomous practice, accountability, discipline. And the school I went to, our head coach was huge into weightlifting. And so the weight room was really where the discipline was built for the whole team. So, and, I listened to your podcast with Dawson Zimmerman, and, what do you do to earn your team's respect when you're, instead of standing around on the sideline? Well, how hard do you work out? Are you working out at a different time as your teammates? Do they get to see you work? For us, we were on chain gang as soon as we were done. So for 2-minute drill, we were chain gang, but also ready for a fire field goal. So there was a lot of ways to stay interactive. I thought that was a really cool segment of that episode, by the way. And so with football, going through high school, I had some opportunities to go walk on a couple schools: Notre Dame, Cal, University of Pennsylvania. Great schools. Not the best for your bang for your buck when it came to what I was looking for. I wanted to play right away. I wanted to, compete in an area where I'd have some opportunity to go to the NFL, and playing in California was a lot better of an opportunity for that than, let's say, Indiana or Pennsylvania, and you played in Pennsylvania, Brett. So you know how cold that gets.
The cold's never fun. I don't know about kicking, but like living in Wisconsin my whole life.
Yeah, given the choice, California was better for me. And so I actually was committed to Boise State during my senior year. Or sorry, I wasn't committed. I had an offer from Boise State. I didn't commit to it.
And this was 06. This is right after the Fiesta Bowl, right?
So at the time, Kyle Brotzman was gray shirting at Boise State. And they had Kyle already there. They had made me an offer. I didn't commit to it. Because I waited, they offered him. Fresno came in and offered me. After that, I took a trip, met with Coach Baxter, and the rest was done. But yeah, could have gone either way. But I'm thankful for the career I had, man. Fresno was awesome to me. The town rallied around their football, and I got to play a lot of games.
What was it that swung you in that recruiting process? Was it something Coach Baxter said, or how did he, persuade you to go to Fresno over Boise?
Sure. So, timing was also important in that. By the time Fresno came around, I didn't have Boise, right? So I had that offer during my senior football season. That offer was gone by the end of my football season. They had already extended it to Kyle. He was on site as a gray shirt. Obviously he was going to take the scholarship. And he was an awesome combo punter, kicker for them. He was one of the, the initiators of the whole rollout punt system in college football, you had to game plan for Kyle Grossman. So that was a great scholarship for them. For me, my timing was, well, it's either this or walk on somewhere. And I wanted to play D1 ball, and I wanted to play against my high school teammates that were going to USC. And so Fresno, I took a visit up there. Coach Baxter was awesome. He was the clinching factor, him and Coach Pat Hill. Coach Hill's like 2 weeks older than my dad. So like having someone very similar in age, similar in experience, background was really important. But also Coach Baxter's commitment to how seriously he took special teams was huge. You know, my whole career in high school sports, man, it's a flip of a coin whether or not anyone on staff's going to know kicking. But for me, it was everything I knew about kicking was either I had to go to a camp to learn it or it was self-taught. So coming to Fresno State with all the attention to special teams, it was like, oh, this is where I need to be. You know, and
what do you guys think? And sorry to cut you off, but
No,
I'm
you're
just
good.
thinking here. I talk to a lot of snappers who they're talking to schools, they're getting recruited, and the coaches are telling them that either A, the option is like, I know a lot, we're going to help you out throughout the season and make sure that you're getting better, or B, I don't know anything, go work with your coach in private. Do you guys have a preference? If you're the kicker or you're the snapper going into a situation, what would you guys prefer?
Man, that's a great question, Kyle. I was actually going to ask your input on, what factors that you look into.
I definitely have my opinion on that,
Sure.
but I was curious what Kevin, why don't you go first and let me know what you think?
You know, I'm not going to tell a Division I special teams coach how to run their shop. But if they're admittedly open that, hey, I'm an X's and O's guys, I come from safeties and linebackers, I don't want to pretend or sell you that I know kicking. Okay, great. Is that special teams coach open to communicating with that kicking coach? If he's telling you to go work with that guy, what sort of access do I have as a special teams coach to communicate with that coach? For two reasons. Number one, if that player's there, I want to make sure he finishes his degree there. You know, there's a lot of money chasing with NIL. Get your dang degree, right? But also, number two, I want to help that program get better. If it's a person I'm working with, I want to help that program be better. How can I coach that player with what he's seeing every day on the practice field, which I'm seeing only in select video clips, which are probably the players' better clips, right? They're sending me, but also, attitude. What can I work on with that kid when he's on the field with me? What things, kickoff style. Are you a corner guy? Are you a deep bomber? Where do you like things to work off? What do you do that I can help specifically hone your specialists to do what you want them to do in your situation, your scheme? And if that coach wants that player to work with an outside source, then either that player needs to know or that coach needs to know what that focus is. But ultimately, it's not up to me to ask the coach that question. That's up to the player to be the adult and to be the initiator and say, hey, could I put you two in touch? If they're more, I want to do it my way, then really it becomes a me and the player conversation if they want to have individual conversations. But when it comes to executing on the field, that player has to disregard what I say and put their coach and their team first.
Brace yourselves for The Kicker's Bible. The Kicker's Bible, a specialist how-to manual born from a decade of dedication to specialists and special teams. This ain't your average football book. It's the holy grail of gridiron guidance. Dive into the wisdom of over 20 NFL specialists, including Eagles Hall of Famer David Akers and 15-year NFL vet and kicking guru Shane Graham, as they answer your burning questions to become the best specialist that you can possibly be. Whether you're a Pee-wee rookie or an NFL veteran, this book is your secret weapon to kicking success. It's out now. Go to www.icemankicking.com/books or our Twitter bio at Iceman Coaching or Amazon and search The Kicker's Bible to get your copy today. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Now kick your feet up And let's get back to one cold episode.
And so I've had a couple instances where I just have snappers who they're in a certain location and the coach is telling them, overcoaching them, things I would never tell a snapper to do. And so in those instances, it becomes a little bit rougher. But I don't know. I and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like kicking's a little more mainstream. People know more about it, or at least pretend to know more about it. And I feel like snapping's a little more under the radar. Maybe people don't understand it as much, or the details that are involved. So maybe it's a little bit different, snappers to kickers or punters to snappers, So I was just curious what your guys' input was on that.
Well,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, right, it's an execution thing. If you execute and do it wrong, hey, that's a different conversation than doing it wrong and not executing, right? But also, how many sports are like kicking? Golf, baseball, soccer. How many sports are like long snapping where you're doing this?
Not a lot technically, mentally, the science behind it, a lot more than you'd think, which is the exciting part, what I really get into. But yeah, I definitely see what you're saying.
So there, yeah, like you said, there's a lot more room for people to have that familiarity or commonality.
I think too, Kyle, hitting on your point is like to me, it depends on the coach's ego. I will say from my perspective, the mindset I've taken on, and also with Coach Baxter, we encourage our guys, hey, see as many kicking coaches as you want. Work with as many different guys, get as many different opinions. But when things are, when it's nut cutting time, one, have your guy that you go to, right? And that can get you out of a pinch. And then two, when it comes to our meeting room, you're going to listen to what we say and make those changes, or you're not going to play. You're right, Kevin. A lot, it has to deal with, what are you executing on the field? What are you outputting? If you're talking to a million different kicking coaches and it's working, well, great. But at the end of the day, we got to execute regardless of whatever. So in the off season, we encourage them to meet different people and work with different people and get different perspectives. That's all great. But at the end of the day, let's make sure that we're executing. And that deals with, hey, does coach believe, I have this big ego and what I say goes, or are they open to outside influence? I think just as a specialist coach or worked with many different specialists, it's always great to hear other people's input, and then you and the player can decide from there, hey, is this beneficial or is this detrimental to my playing style?
And a lot of it too is this a freshman straight out of high school? What kind of GPA does he have? What kind of, decision-making capabilities do they show? Because for me, it's like, okay, how much latitude am I going to give this person in the off season, right? If it's someone that is struggling in training camp, has had a rough off season, that is doing a lot of different things, and you can already tell there's too many voices going on, I might try to just isolate my work on bare bones, basics, routine, development, steps, ball contact, simple. If it's a guy that's like a draft eligible, prospect, it's a guy that, has shown that they put in their own work. They've shown that they can be accountable for having the correct perspective and priority of things. Then yeah, you give them that more latitude.
Absolutely. I get that. So, okay, cool. So also, and then Kyle too, talk about what factors do you tell, your snappers when they're looking to find a spot, what is important, or what do you think is important when they're trying to figure out what school they should attend or play for?
So I think the biggest thing that I've been really on guys about is doing research, because I've seen so many younger kids that they don't even research the schools that are offering them. They'll get an offer, they'll go, and then they'll get there and realize they don't have my program, or this isn't a good social fit, or this is too far from home. And I wish they would have dug into that beforehand. Obviously it seems like such a dumb thing not to look into, but to be honest, I feel like I've talked to a good chunk of kids where it just doesn't seem like they looked into it. So even just doing the simplest research into like, do you like the facilities? Do you like the uniforms? That's all cool, but there's a lot more behind it that they need to be considering. We've also had the conversations about like, is the coach going to be with you all day and coaching you all day, or are you left on your own? Because that might be a positive. Then you can work on you. What to be working on, especially the guys I train. I know they understand what they're supposed to be doing. If it's a kid who just snaps the ball, or I won't speak on the kicking half of it, but if it's a kid that just snaps the ball and doesn't know the background of it, or how to get better, then maybe they do need somebody that gives them a little more structure to what they're doing instead of just lets them go and do their thing and then play ping pong, after they're done with their snapping session. So, yeah, I guess it's a little bit more digging into the details with location. Can they get in academically, and just making sure that they are covering all their bases with how they'd fit in there too.
100%. I could see that too, Calvert. I've never really thought about, hey, not having to work out with the coach is a plus, but it makes sense. If you have a good idea of what you're doing and you've worked with someone like yourself, you have a plan. I think that's the biggest thing for kicking coaches, and you guys know, or any type of special teams coach, is at the end of the day, at least just give your specialist a plan or an organized schedule of what to do. You don't have to be the best fundamental coach, but give them an organized plan and then ask for feedback with that player and say, hey, does this work for you, or do you need more of this and that? So that's a good way to look at it. Kevin, so now talk a little bit. You were on the team for the tail end of Pat Hill's career, and the success that you guys had there. You still had some great teams. Talk a little bit about what that experience was like playing on those Coach Hill teams and what you learned.
I mean, gosh, the guys that we had on those teams are crazy. I mean, our campus was rolling with talent. We had Paul George on the basketball team. We had Aaron Judge on the baseball team. And we had Derek Carr and Devontae Adams on the football team. And all at the same time. And it was nuts. Little, Fresno State. And it was great. I mean, locker room was it was interesting because we had a period where we had a quarterback who, was a local kid, was there a long time, had waited his turn behind, an eventual NFL backup, and Tom Brandstater named Ryan Colburn. Ryan waited a long time behind Tom. He got a couple of years, and, those are real field goal friendly years. We had a great offense at getting into field goal range, and we converted on a lot of those his 2 years that he started. The last year with Derek, I mean, Derek Carr sitting on the bench, I'm sure ready to play. He was a great teammate, great, practice squad quarterback when he was, that was his role. And, our locker room held each other accountable. My long snapper, I played 53 games with. He's a firefighter now. Super accountability with him. There was no slacking off. Core work on the sidelines. We always had chain gang duty for 2-minute drill. But we were always out there 15 minutes early. We actually, fun enough, you're talking about practice schedule. We had a full menu that Coach Baxter and I put together of no contact work, light contact work, and full contact work. So no contact would be all your ball-less kicks, right? Your bench drill, your free, swings down a field, your, standing in place and doing a line drill, even a no step with a foam ball. Then you had light contact, 1-step stuff, and then all the way full contact. So we had to choose based out of our kicks. We could do unlimited no contact work. We could do 20 reps of light contact work and 30 reps of full contact work. Well, I'm a guy that liked to kick 60, 70 balls a day. I'd kick my leg off. And if I wasn't as big as I am, it would have hurt me a lot sooner. But, as soon as my season's over, I have a hip labrum surgery on my kicking leg. And, 60, 70 balls a day to do that. So, playing with Pat Hill, though, we got a lot of opportunities. He put me out there for a lot of gutsy situations early on in my career. And I messed up a few of them and came through on a couple. So a lot, my freshman year was all about welcome to the show, so.
I like that menu idea, just kind of giving them things to pick from. And I think you could do that with any position, kicker, punter, snapper, and just give them ideas of, here are some things you could do that are pretty light, whether you're sore, whether you've taken a lot of snaps or kicks today. I think that's smart. I like that.
And that's the collaboration aspect that I really like, and that I think a lot of coaches need to take on is, that's one of the things Coach Baxter is so good at. Like, okay, tell me what you think your practice schedule should be, and then we can tailor it to fit your needs. I mean, that's really what you do too, right, Kyle? Working with someone is like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what you're seeing. Now, how can we best create a schedule for yourself?
Right. Well, and I think a lot of guys, especially newer guys to college football, don't know what it looks like to be a specialist the whole time. Maybe they were another position player in high school, and so being left on their own for a couple hours a day, they don't know how to attack that. They don't know how to maybe not work as hard. They'll go out and they'll try to snap 100 balls a day. Um, and I definitely think it comes down to just being a little smarter, working smarter, not harder with that. So even just coming up with some kind of plan could be better than nothing. So that the collaboration with the player and the coach can definitely go a long way too.
Yeah. So Kevin, talk a little bit about, you're in your season, and once you've kind of figured it out now, you're a little bit later in your career. Talk about what a normal kicking schedule week would be like for you, and go in a little bit more detail. You
Sure.
talked about like your dry run, right? Or your non-contact drills. Like, what is the bench drill, or what
Sure.
would a Tuesday, which is your, or Monday, whatever the first day back was, you start with, warm-ups and then go to dry runs. Talk about that a little bit more in depth.
Sure. So our practice schedule was such where we would have to be out 15 minutes early because we had warm up, then we go straight into a 2-minute drill with a potential game winning field goal. Had to be warm to kick that. And when I was there, they liked to make sure those were at least 45 yards. We had quite a few long ones in practice, and team got a kick out of making those. So that was always fun. But I had to be ready to hit a long ball. Some days I was more warm than others. Some days I was more, 15 minutes early than others. So, just being ready. I mean, you have to be confident enough in what you do that if you had to jump out of a pair of jeans, throw on a pair of shorts and go do it, could you do it? The answer is no, you're not working hard enough. I mean, you can put as much getting ready, practice, warm up behind it. As you get older, you have to. But if you physically or mentally feel like you need to go through the same thing every time just to be good or make a kick, you're making it too complicated. So like for me, getting out there was just about getting warm, getting my whole body loose, sweating, going through a few drills and make sure my ball contact was clean. For me, kicking's all about checkpoints, right? In the early video games with PlayStation, there was like a jet ski game that you would go through a gate and it was checkpoints. Well, everything else is style. You could swerve, you could drive straight, but in between the checkpoints, you have to be at certain fundamental places. Same with the kicking swing. When you're at the plant foot, you have to be at a certain place. When you're at contact, your upper body, your lower body, your hips all have to be square. So for me, it was all about making sure my checkpoints were in the right place. My drill work was all about starting at the ball and working back to full steps, 3 steps. So, I didn't used to do a lot of no step when I was in college. I started using that more as a pro when I got better at my balance and my core strength on my kicking side, because I would like push my hips towards the plant side and dip, which was a bad habit that I didn't correct soon enough. But, for me, no steps would have been more beneficial. So just warming up, getting ready to go. Once we're out of practice, it was all about just getting, snap hold kicks in, making sure my timing was under 125. I was the best when I was the fastest. If I was 110 to 115, I was going to be money. If I got outside of 125 towards 135, I was going to be more likely to miss. So for me, even though it was more uncomfortable, my op times, I was trying to get them as quick as possible. Not fast, just get off times quick. With that, a lot of my work was based around getting my jab step in the ground. I used to take a huge jab step, and a lot of that caused me problems with timing. So, working as a pro with Nick Novak, he started talking about pushing off that back foot to initiate the jab foot, which was really interesting. But it took all the inconsistency out of the lift and put down and made it, instead of 2 actions, lift down, right? It's just push forward with 1. So it took something super simple and made it even simpler. Again, keeping the body just square, easy, simple, and swinging free. Making sure I was hitting that upper inside bone on the foot on the back of the inside of the ball and putting the ball through with a nice rotation.
I do like what you said about having rules, and I think that definitely applies to all the specialist positions. Like there's rules that apply, and whether they look different for you and your body and your swing or your snap, the rules apply to everybody. You can't change the laws of physics because you don't feel comfortable doing that. So I definitely agree with the checkpoints analogy you
Because
had.
we tend to get a lot of specialists who are kind of, specialists come into being a specialist usually because they weren't ever the best athlete at what they did. I was never a best athlete on any team I played in from being 6 years old to college or pro. Never, not once. Maybe in basketball, the 2 years I played, one of them I was, but that was it. We lost every game. So with that said, you get guys that kind of do things quirky just because of who they are. So a lot of kicking is, okay, how much quirky are we going to be able to allow and work around, and how much it is actually getting in the way of your development? You mentioned my kickoff step, Brett. Early in my career as a younger kid, I was more athletic, faster, not fast, but faster. Well, with that kickoff step, I ended up having to take that out because as I got slower, it was no longer doing what it was intended to do, which was to keep me from getting too fast too early in my kickoff approach. I got way too fast early in my steps, so that's why I did it. As a pro, I couldn't do that anymore. I just wasn't fast. So, but it's ultimately just finding out what works for you. But I mean, it has to make sense according to physics, right?
Right. Well, first of all, you live and learn based on what your experience, but I think it does come down to that physics part. And even though it might not be comfortable at times, like the rules are the rules, right? And I think a lot of guys, their athleticism makes up for things rather than them wanting to be quirky. Like in snapping, you can see a lot of different like grips or lack of body control or finishes with a snapper. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but that guy's a really good athlete, or he's really quick, or he's does a good job with X and Y and Z, but he doesn't do a great job with the other pieces. So, I think that even happens with kickers. I mean, you can get a guy that's a really good athlete and kicks the ball far, but he may not be very good technically. And I think when you find the balance between technique and athleticism, that's when you get guys that are really good at it too.
I like that, the balance between technique and athleticism. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing I see with a lot of my pro guys is they're really good athletes. Some of them weren't great technicians to start out with, but once we are able to balance that a little bit better, they see themselves accelerating their learning and their skill level too.
No question. No question. Okay, so Kevin, you talked about what it took for you to get out there and get going, and that you should be able to just throw jeans on and do it. I like that analogy because it should be like secondhand there. And you talked about the checkpoints, which are really good. Okay, then talk about a normal practice schedule. Like, what is your periods 1 through 6? What are you doing? 6 through 10? What are you doing? Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, our schedule, we had that field goal period, and then it was a long time then it would be go to stretch and then special teams. So we'd have to be ready so we go through team stretch, have to be ready to go special teams. The hardest part was when you might have, an hour and a half, 2 hour downtime, and then you have 1 5-minute field goal period. I mean, for me, I would cut my losses, just, chill during the rest of the day, find ways to help the team, maybe do a core workout, do some sprints, something like that, do some cardio. And then just warm up again, quick 5-minute warm up, use the team trainers to get a stretch, and then, go kick. For me, a lot of it, my practice days, Monday was, or let's call it Monday, the first day of the week. So Monday was going to be probably my heaviest day. Monday, Tuesday were going to be my heaviest work days. Kickoff, a lot of, heavy field goal, half line rush, where you're doing a lot of reps. Wednesday, really kind of focusing on, okay, what's making this week successful or not? What are we focusing on? Is it a returner that we're making sure we're kicking high hang times? Is it making sure we're doing a certain direction? It's game plan. Thursday's all, walk through, travel, all that. Friday's walk through, and you're gone. So really, I'm trying to work my week of work into really 3 days. If I'm trying to do something on Thursday for a Saturday game that really should have been done on Monday or Tuesday, then that's my fault. Now, if there's something in the process of game plan that comes up on Thursday that we need to drill, then, hey, we do it. But really, I'm trying to put a lot of my work in early of the week so that I can responsibly manage my recovery going into the game and going into the next Monday after the game.
I think that's really smart. And I think a lot of younger specialists struggle with that. They'll try to keep working on something and getting better and better and better, or trying to. When I definitely agree. If you're having a rough Wednesday or a rough Thursday and you're trying to fix something going into Friday, Saturday, good luck. Those are the times where you just kind of shut off your brain and just hope for the best on that game day, and hopefully it goes well and you can recover from it. But yeah, absolutely agree on that too.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, I like that. So you kind of transition, and now you talked about, in your first season, kind of having some success, some struggles, and going through it.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about handling adversity and
And we could do a whole podcast just on that. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, so I redshirt my whole year, or my whole first year, but during training camp, our starting kicker's hurt. So I'm taking all the full team reps in the paper, the redshirt kicker's this, the redshirt kicker's that. And I did well that camp. And our kicker was great, man. He got some pro shots in Clint Stitzer. He was phenomenal. Excellent mentor. The thing about playing at special teams at Fresno State for Coach Baxter, I don't know if any other special teams coach does this, but as a redshirt kicker, you're doing pretty much nothing but charting, doing scouting and charting the other teams. You're charting every kick of every kickoff, and you're preparing the scouting report for your teammates as a redshirt. So there's a high level of accountability among specialists from the beginning at Fresno State that was different than any other position. They have a playbook, we didn't. So our goal was to get our teammates ready for special teams by being the scouting department for them. And for me as a young redshirt, that taught me a ton about the game and how to prepare, how to talk to my teammates who are running, the outside contain guy, the knife, guys that are running the wedge, guys that are running the field contain, the ball contain. What are you doing? And what's your job? And what is the scouting report showing that tendency is going to be based on the returner? Is he a bouncer? Is he a guy that sticks to it? Is he a speed guy? Is he a power guy? Like there was Texas A&M had that running back.
Dvorsky Lane.
What was his name?
Dvorsky Lane.
Yeah, is that the type of kickoff returner you have, or is it going to be like a Reggie Bush? Way different ways to cover that kickoff returner. So we were heavily involved in that. So for us, that was a big part of it.
Now, is this a budget thing or to help the team kind of a thing?
It was to make sure that we were a part of making sure the team. Hey, it's mid-majors, man. Welcome to Fresno.
Hey. I mean, I like it. I always have snappers like, hey, are you scouting the other snapper so you can help out your team and just point something out to the coach if you see something that they don't like? Yeah, and I think that's cool.
I think there's definitely value. I think that might have been a mid-2000s thing. I don't think we do a whole lot of that now, which is really
now
cool.
They have analysts and quality controls. We didn't have quality controls. The lowest guy on the totem pole was the GA.
Right.
I mean, our football ops guy didn't even have a GA at that time.
Yeah. But I do think, like you're saying, Kyle, there's some value. I know other places I've been, like even at the Power 5 level, we had all of our specialists do a scouting report on whatever unit they're going to play against. So if they're the long snapper, they're doing a scout report on the punt return team, what block looks they like to bring, what their return alignment looks like, who's their best returner, who's their block guys, or field goal, who they used, and what block looks have they used. And it was good for our specialists. So you had to do that the week before. Is that right, Kevin?
That'd be done by like Tuesday or Wednesday for a Saturday game, because that had to be printed in the scouting report by Thursday. So, but my freshman year or my redshirt year, I did training camp. I redshirted, didn't travel. Freshman year, first game I start, number 10 Wisconsin comes to Fresno State. We lose 13-10, and I went 1 for 4. That speaks for itself, dude. I mean, here's the deal. I hit my first ball 51 right over the upright, gets called no good. Hey, if you put over the uprights, you leave it up to them. That's my fault. Next 2, couple misses, make the last one. It wasn't enough. We lose. All of a sudden, my apartment inherited a brick through the window, and my car got a broken window. And the complex I lived at was cool about it. Shout out to Bulldog Village.
That's rough.
Hey, man, it's college sports, and it's Fresno. There's not a lot to do, but our fans really care about their football.
And how do you respond to that, Kevin? Like, what is your mindset you're a young kicker. What's your
All
mindset
right. So
going
you
into
talked
next
about
week?
in your questions, a lot of times media comes up, right? How do you handle media? So I was one of those guys that I decided before I started playing, I was either going to take every interview or no interviews. That's it. So I decided I was going to take every interview going into my college career. So I took interviews with the paper in my redshirt year. I took interviews going into the season. I mess up. All of a sudden, what am I going to do? Hide? Hey, my teammates out to dry, my coach is out to dry. No, that's not what I'm going to do. So went up to the podium, took the questions, answered, yeah, it's my fault. Need to do some things better. Team played well enough to win. And you learn. And we had a couple more of those. We had a double overtime game against Hawaii with some penalties called, missed a couple kicks, went 3 for 5 that game, and we lost at home. And that Hawaii in Fresno is a big deal at home. And so I give a guy that I had met with when I was preparing to go to Fresno State named Dr. Ken Ravizza. He's one of the best sports psychologists that I've ever been around. He's passed since, but he's mainly a baseball guy. Worked with Team USA, Long Beach State, Cal State Fullerton during their World Series runs, New Zealand All Blacks. He worked cross sports on sports psychology. And I call him on a Tuesday. I'm like, I can't hit a barn. Like I just can't make a kick. He's like, well, when you go out there to kick, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make kicks? Or are you trying to be great? What do they say when they put their arms up? Do they say it's good, or they say it's great, it's awesome, it's perfect? They say it's good, right? Stop trying to do everything perfect. Just do it good. Take that pressure of doing everything right. Let the athlete take over. Find some cues. So over a few rounds of sessions with him, we worked on, before going out to the field, what am I doing on first down, second down, third down? In the stadium, we worked on developing what's called a trigger, or a push button, something that you find or look at or touch that's always in the stadium, same place, doesn't move, that you can use as an initiator for your routine. Okay, I start my routine every time the same way. For me, what that was I always ran into the field from the 50-yard line. I always liked the uprights getting closer to me. And unless it was a 60-yarder or longer, coming from the 50, it was never going to change. So for me, that kept things the same. I was always in the same spot. Every stadium, I'd find something that I liked about it and use that, something positive to get my routine going.
Did your trigger, it started the thought process, or was that somewhere you focused?
It was like starting the routine. Yeah, that was like the zeroing in. Okay, focus. This is your start. This is like a start button.
Did you say what your start button was?
In every stadium, it was something different. It might have been a retired number that I liked that made me, think of a player I liked. It might have been finding that they had my number retired. Whatever. It's something that I liked, or a player that, La Tech, there was Terry Bradshaw and Pop Warner's names on the side of the building. So that was cool. Different things like that.
What was it at Bulldog Stadium?
I think it might have been the Table Mountain Rancheria deal. The
sponsor
logo, yeah, the sponsor logo in between. I think it was Bulldog Stadium or something that had the Table Mountain. Yeah. Anyways, so there's always a different logo or a different something in each stadium that uses that indicator, that start button, and that would get my routine going. So first down, dry rep, stretch. Second down, hit a ball. Third down, find the coach. Fourth down, you're in. Then from there,
I've heard that before from a lot of really good specialists too, like some kind of start button, whether it's them like clapping their hands right before they go.
It's a pitching thing. I read Jim Abbott's pitching journal with that same sports psychologist, the one-arm pitcher from the Angels. It's incredible, man. The things these guys do outside of the actual execution of their position to make sure that they are in the same spot, the same mental, bandwidth every time they go out. It's unbelievable.
Did you feel like when you were struggling that you had, like looking back at it, like a certain technical issue that If you would have just like cleaned that up, it would have been better, and you wouldn't have had to dive so deep into the mental side of it.
For me, yeah, I would say so. For me, a lot of times I got really aggressive at the ball, right? Really fast to the ball. So for me, it was starting early. I like to watch the snap in. I'm one of those. Nobody likes that guy. But for me, my whole thing was when my front eye would fly forward. So being a lefty, right? Think opposite. I try not to speak in left and rights. I try to speak in front back because of that. But my front eye, I always wanted on the back of the ball. Two things that did. It made sure I wasn't looking for results through contact. It made sure that plant foot side rusher was never in my peripheral. I never wanted that rusher coming across the formation to be in my peripheral and to me to look up. So I would watch the ball in from the snap with my right eye, with my front eye, and just keep it there until I was kicked and through and then go through. It was down to, getting my jab step in the same place every time. For me, it's my drive step. As a coach, I try to not even use a jab step as much anymore, just because the drive step is the most commonly mistaken thing with kickers is taking that jab step or that drive step straight to the ball. They're driving inside of the ball and they're putting themselves in a position where now they have to make an angle. So, man, I wish I could show this.
Just demonstrate right now.
All right. What most kickers do, what they should do. So their first step, their jab comes here, their drive step goes here to the ball. This is the ball. That's where they should be planting. So they make like a zigzag. Mm-hmm. Their jab step should go forward. That drive step lands pretty close, plant smooth, creates all sorts of space. So for most kickers, I'm just focusing on that drive step. And for me as a kicker, that's where most of my practice was spent. If my drive step was more in line with my plant than the ball, I knew I was going to be able to crush it. And then it was triggering, right? Most kickers are triggering here into the ball. Backswing, they're coming down. I'm trying to wait till my knee's getting pretty close to the ball. Now I'm triggering through. That's why I could hit the ball farther than most of the guys I competed against.
That's just science, and that doesn't change from sport to sport. So guess what? In snapping,
long drivers talk.
The same thing.
Listen to when long drivers pull the trigger.
Kyle,
it's not here, dude. It is like almost here.
Yeah, and you and Kevin can kind of talk about that. So you're talking about being almost slow with your load, Kevin, your load swing. And
patient, mm-hmm. Not slow, because slow breeds lazy. Patient, and they're waiting for it. And yep.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, the same thing with snapping. So many snappers are taught or really preached to so hardcore to be aggressive from the start, but the more they can be patient with their sequencing and accelerating through the finish, it makes it so much easier to be deliberate, accelerate a faster ball. Same thing happens like if you're throwing a baseball, you don't accelerate it from way back here. It's once the elbow breaks, boom, then that ball comes with speed. So kicking, snapping, throwing, that's where I like to talk about the physics don't change. So don't try to force different physics when they're not, it's going to be like a square in a round hole, right? So it's got to fit up. But I love that analogy.
So same thing, like with the punter, being patient, have that knee driving to your chest, and then as you're about to make contact with that ball, explode up and through.
Oh man, 100%. Punting is the hard one. Before a guy ever has any success being patient is the most challenging time to convince them to do so. Once they've 100%. Had that taste of success, ditto Kyle, once they've felt it, okay, I've been patient and I still bombed it. I didn't have to rush. I didn't have to over try. I didn't have to muscle up and I still bombed it. Once they get that, it becomes a lot easier to be patient. So in
effortless.
In punting, man, not only do you have to be patient, hit it bombed, now you got to hit a spiral too. Now you got to walk left, punt right in today's day and age, right? Or hit those Louis punts or whatever they're called. I mean, you got to hit an end over end, a rollout. So punters, they got to be like a pitcher. They got to be enough of a football aware person which in college football we have seen happen where they have to know the game well enough to know how to get out of trouble in a bad situation, right? Kyle, every snap's perfect, and sometimes punters decide to mess them up, and they want to run it outside. And I mean, if you got to throw the ball away, punt it away, but you can't give it up, and you can't put your team in a worse spot.
So my question to you, Kyle, what is an example, or what happens when a guy is not patient and he rushes his snap? What do you see, or what does it look like to the untrained eye?
So typically what you're going to see is a very aggressive throw. Guys are going to drive their arms into their body. They're going to compact their levers. And it typically, from like the untrained eye, you're just going to see somebody that just like looks explosive, which a lot of people are like, yes, that looks great. You want to be explosive because that breeds a faster snap. It actually helps you reach a ceiling really quickly that you can't surpass with ball speed then. So you may be able to throw the ball 100% effort and throw it fairly fast. But if you were to slow down and be patient and accelerate and have better body control, you'll be able to throw a faster ball with less effort. And so Kevin, when you're talking about that, I'm like, yes, it's the same thing, because that is the most frustrating thing. When I have guys come to my gym, I'm like, slow down. And they're like, but I want to throw it faster. I'm like, yeah, you will. Don't worry. Here's why, and here's how. And I could explain it all day. I can show them film of it happening, but like somewhere in the back of their brain, they're like, I don't know. That doesn't seem like it should work. But once they feel it, it makes a big difference. So a smooth, controlled, whippy kind of a throw is going to go a lot better, faster, more consistently than somebody who's trying to be explosive from the very start.
And Kyle, how do you train that? Or how do you, okay, we've identified this and we want to work on this. Now, how do you train it into your snappers?
So a big part of it is getting rid of cues that they might have been using in the past. So in the snapping world, so many guys are trying to drive their elbows. They're trying to be quick. They're trying to get their hands to the finish. They might even be trying to take their ball from the ground to the punter's hip in a straight line. There's no other throwing or striking sport where your object that you're throwing or propelling travels on a straight line. There's always an arc. There's an angle. When you kick, you're not kicking your leg in a straight line. There's a swing path. So it's the same thing with a snapper, but if they're thinking straight line, quick, fast, aggressive, A to B, we have to basically rewire that. So I have to show them and teach them, hey, there has to be an angle. There has to be an arcing path. When do you accelerate that path? What do you move first? So we're looking at how do you initiate your throw? Instead of hands, it's getting your core to lead first so we can get more of a throw into it. So it's a lot. And so I typically break it down into chunks and like baby step our way into it. But at the same time, for most first time snappers with me, it's a lot. It's like overwhelming almost, because they're like, everything I've ever thought is like wrong. And there's no wrong way to snap the ball. It's just there's effective and efficient. And I deal more with the efficiency part of it.
So is it more slow motion stuff or being slow, and then when you get to your point, exploding your hands at your target?
Some slow motion, but it's a lot more body awareness to know where they are in space and time, and then just understanding that movement too. So I also break it up into a lot more. So instead of just slow movements, it's break up the back half, then here's the middle, then here's the start, and understand each component individually. So that way we can put it together and you understand what there's things look like and feel like when they come together.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's interesting. Kevin, another great lefty kicker, David Akers, who I've been able to connect with, he talked about proprioception, which is your body's alignment in relation to the ground, right? And understanding what muscles control what. So I'm assuming, like for a kicker, understanding, hey, this is the quad muscle that locks out my knee and my ankle at the same time, and this is how I use it to make contact. Is that some sort of stuff you do?
A few years ago, Josh Scobie did something, I think, like at a PGA event where they had a sensor on the tee box showing which muscles actually triggered on a golf swing. I don't know if it was Josh or not, but I think it was him, because I think he did a field goal like that. And they showed the most active muscle in the kicking motion was the plant leg hamstring. The driving of that hamstring, was one of the most hardest firing muscles. I might be wrong on who did it, but I remember seeing that in college and being like, oh,
Do you think that's because that's the deceleration of their momentum into the kick, or what's the?
I think so. Using the ground and transferring out of the ground, that push, like in the golf swing, pushing out of the backside leg and getting all that momentum going up through the ball, preserving their potential energy as long as possible, keeping the body behind the ball as long as possible, so that when the time comes to transfer the plant leg's potential energy and push off the ground, it's as close in timing as the kicking leg's potential energy transferring into kinetic when it hits the ball. The closer those two are together, the bigger that bang's going to be. You notice the best kickers have a pretty well timed up instantaneous reaction of their plant foot pushing and their kicking foot impacting the ball. The tighter that is, the more synchronized that is, the less opportunity you have for error.
I'm following, and I'm not even a kicker.
There we go.
Now, I do
So
have
then
one
from there,
question.
it's just working backwards, right? Well, if you're on your plant foot a long time, that's not going to be very easy to do. So again, taking them more patient into their plant foot and pushing out of it, like you said, the heel toe nature with David Akers. Heel toe into it, absolutely. I like to stay behind the ball and inside of the ball so I can get through the inner part of the ball.
What were you going to say, Colin?
Well, so because Kevin, you're getting kind of nerdy in here, and I like it with energy and transferring it and stuff like that. And I'm all about that. Just for maybe the snappers listening in here as well. As a kicker, do you ever see a kicker skip through with their left leg and then kick the ball? It's a stupid question, I know. But
no,
yeah, because that would be dumb, right?
The answer is no. Yeah,
yeah, because that's not how energy is transferred from
that's
body
not how
to
that
ball.
works, right?
Then how many snappers have you seen hopping or moving back as they throw the ball? Like
yeah,
as a movement expert like yourself, that's what I deal with but I think I throw harder when I leave the ground or move as I throw. And then I have to explain there's no sports where moving as you strike, moving as you throw is beneficial to power or accuracy. So I just want to throw that out there too, because it's not even the kicking world. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Even tennis players, they look like they're off the ground. Their feet are still pushing to create the power out of their legs. They're still connected to the ground when they're making contact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great point. When you're preaching to the choir here with Kyle.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just want to make sure any snappers listening are also hearing what Kevin's saying, and like nothing changes. The things that you talk about are applicable to what we do too.
Mm. All right, Kevin. So we're talking about Dr. Ken Ravizza and, dealing with adversity. And you're talking about 3 different ways you've dealt with. You talked about the first one. Go a little bit more into detail and tell us those other 2 steps that you dealt with.
Yeah. So imperfect reps, unsuccessful individual efforts, and completely off days or periods. So yeah, imperfect reps. I'm not going to really try to change a whole lot. I'm just going to try to, stick to my fundamentals, keep it focused on the positive. Coach Baxter and Dr. Ravizza both talk about the mind's inability to process no. And what that comes down to is when you give yourself a negative coaching point, don't do this, try not to do that, make sure you don't this. That becomes the focal point of what you're doing. So guess what you're probably more likely to do? That which you focus on. So for me, I'm just trying to focus on my positives, my cues, my jab step, my drive step, ball contact. The things that are going to bang for buck, make more kicks than not. Unsuccessful efforts, missed kicks in practice, missed kicks in games, missed opportunities in a competitive environment. Might lose to a backup in a charting session, anything like that. That never happened. That happened plenty. So those sorts of things, how do you handle that? Well, that comes down to what type of drill work and dry work am I doing? Am I investing in my time away from a football? Right? In the soccer match, they say about 3% of the match is spent with the ball, or 3 minutes of the match is spent with the ball at your feet. So for any one player. So what do you do in the other 87 minutes of the match? Same thing as a kicker. You're only kicking so much in a game, 10 reps max most of the time. So what are you doing in your free time, in your gym time, in your practice time without a football that you're getting better? Drill work. For me, strength training was not a huge part of getting better as a kicker, but hip flexor strength was something that really opened my eyes. Now, a lot of track athletes are used to like a 4-way hip machine. You guys know what I'm talking about when I say that? It's like a machine on a peg, and it rotates 180 degrees on a lever. So you stand up here, your quad on the machine, and you drive it up like this. Well, it has a peg that you change the weight, and that machine, practicing the timing and intentionality of when I'm triggering with weight, using weight to actually force train my body. So I wasn't trying to drive down hard here. I would set the peg to where the weight was, or the pad was just set up just behind where I wanted to trigger from. So like just behind, straight down. And then I'd focus on my drive up. Most kickers, if you show them that drill or that machine, they would take it, they would move it as far back as they can and see how far they could stretch their hip flexor. And then they would try to pull down, thinking that's creating power. Well, it is, but it's not what you're doing in your motion. You're just retraining a bad habit in the weight room. So everything I did, I wanted to make sure was focused around developing the motion that I needed to be successful. Hip flexors is one of the most undertrained strength muscles, and the backside low glute high hamstring on the kicking, mostly on the kicking leg, is probably the most understretched muscle for kickers. That high hamstring, low glute on either side.
Yeah. And how did you work that out, Kevin? How did you activate that or stretch that?
I fought it. I did, but I mean, as I got older, I just put aside the time and stretched. I got into yoga. Our rec center offered some pretty good, movement centric, like Les Mills style yoga classes that were fun. But even now, just turning on YouTube, finding like a 30-minute hip and hamstring yoga session. I mean, there's all sorts of content out there now. There's no excuse not to do it, except being lazy. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. There's too many alternatives for some kids. The ones that are going to make it are the ones that can, tune it out and focus on what matters.
Sure. And then Kyle too, did you have any input on what you encourage your snappers to do hip wise, or do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I guess so. First of all, I would, going back to using that machine, I bet those kickers aren't great at golf either. And that's the same thing I bring up with my snappers. I'm like, you try to like be really aggressive through your throw. Do you suck at golf too? And they're like, yeah, I do suck at golf. I'm like, well, you're probably trying to kill the ball and you're not being smooth and accelerated and controlled. So, no, I think for snappers though, as far as like body awareness and mobility, one of the biggest neglected parts is probably lats and shoulders, because most snappers think I get all my power from my legs. And just like we talked about, if guys are trying to throw their legs and be super aggressive there, they're probably compact and like in tight positions with their upper body. So they're not creating length and leverage and acceleration with their throw. So lats, shoulders, thoracic spine, being able to create flexion and extension through the core is really important. But a lot of guys struggle with that because they've never thought about using it, or they just don't know how to.
100%. I could see that. That's really good. So sorry, Kevin, go back to what you were saying there with the different points that you're working on mentally training.
Yeah. So with Dr. Ravizza, if I had an unsuccessful charting day, it would just be about, or a single effort, missed kick, going down to really watching the film. I like to watch film. I might watch the film a few times, see what I did, just get a generic idea of what looked wrong. And then based on knowing what I do, how it should look, and how it should feel are three totally distinct things. And the more familiar you get with how you look, doing what you're supposed to do, and knowing how it feels doing what you're supposed to do, then the more you can evaluate the three and figure out if you're doing it right. If you do
every specialist should write those three things down right now.
Because most kickers, what gets lost in translation is they know what they're being told to do. They might know what it looks like watching their favorite player do it. And that's wonderful if they do, because that's a starting point. But find a favorite player that mimics your physique. Brett, you and I, our favorite kicker to watch shouldn't probably be Justin Tucker, right?
Way too athletic.
He's got at least 3 inches on me, probably about an extra 3 inches on legs, and he's a completely different animal versus Jason Myers. those two wouldn't even watch each other to train, because they're so different. One, so Bucker's the same thing. So watching guys that do what you do, then ultimately synchronizing that together. Completely off days. Okay, I'm sitting down doing a self-scout. I'm watching myself as if I've never met me before. I'm watching a kicker on another team, and in a helpful, not self-predatory way, I am absolutely trying to find every reason why what he does should make kicks, find every reason why what he does should miss kicks. Based on those two lists, find out which one's longer, and just start doing drill work that not only ticks off what you're bad at, but also reinforces what you do well at. A lot of guys, the generation before us, there was a lot of confidence in sports. There wasn't a lot of evaluation. There wasn't a lot of seeing yourself on film. So a lot of the coaching was towards humbling, was towards introducing introspection, was towards, getting people to self-evaluate. Well, now there's so much of that. A lot of guys don't reinforce what they do well. They don't build that side of things. And they're just used to hearing what they need to do better, different, or wrong. And they never really identify what their thing is, how they do it, and how they do it right and well. So self-scouting, putting it on a proper perspective, finding the things they do well, right, focusing on those the next day on the field, and creating drills for the things that they don't do.
I do think that finding what you do well can be a really important thing. And to be honest, I probably overlook that sometimes too, because I'm always breaking things down to the finest detail that maybe we should inject a little bit of positivity in there sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, most of my guys, I work with, because of the nature of kicking, right? There's more high school teams and college teams and pro teams. So mostly who you're working with are high school kids, and they're probably freshman, sophomore. So, they're also still building that confidence in what they're doing and learning it, and, making sure that this is something that they want to do. So, injecting those reinforcements of what foundational things they do well as an athlete that they can rely on is important.
I don't know if this is the same in the kicking world as it is the snapping world, but the lower the level I work with, let's say a high school kid versus a pro guy, the cockier they are. So I feel like that's part of the reason I am a lot more on let's chase perfection. Let's really dig into it, because it's the high school kid who knows nothing, but thinks he's the best and knows everything is the kid that I'm we need to humble this a little bit quicker here.
That guy's going to get really annoyed with me really quickly, and not because of anything other than just I'll want to tell him exactly what's going on, why it's going on, how it's going on, and how to fix it. But but if their independent evaluation is that they don't do anything wrong, then what I have to say really isn't going to matter much to them.
What they need versus what they want to need, or what they want is going to be a little bit different then.
I think too, you're right, Kyle, what you don't know is what you don't know. They're just oblivious and think they're in this world of I am the best thing since sliced bread, where they really don't know so many levels to it. And that's what those NFL guys understand, is that there are levels to training and different cues or different parts of their snap they need to work on.
Right. Well, and then their job's on the line every day, versus if you're a high school kid and you're a 4 or 5-star snapper or kicker, who's taking your job? No, there's no other kid on the team that could even kick the ball, snap the ball like you. So you are the shit. Then you get to college and you're like, oh no, somebody else is as good as me. Then you get to the pro level, you're like, every day somebody's coming after my job.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny too, Kyle, where I see it a lot right now with all this college NIL stuff is, oh shoot, I'm the starter and I just watched my special teams coach offer another kid who's a JUCO kid to come in and compete with me next year. Doesn't he trust me?
Yeah, and how do you approach that mentally? Are you melting down oh no, what do I need to do better? Or are you
do I run? Do I change schools? How do I handle this?
Right.
Well, strap up, because whatever you do, you're probably going to do as a habit the rest of your life. So how do you want to handle this?
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of kids, and now that the transfer portal is a bigger option, they'll jump ship. Well, guess what? No matter where you go, there's going to be competition somewhere else too. So the grass isn't always greener, but you might be able to leave for a better situation, maybe a better fit. But I do think a lot of kids are kind of scared to compete sometimes, and having confidence in yourself and understanding what you could do to improve, I guess, can go a long way as well.
Well, if I can't be the best guy on my team, then I'm probably not going to be the best guy on my team versus their team.
All right, Kevin. So with each guest we bring on, we always try to hit on, whether they're an expert in whatever field, kicking, punting, snapping. We like to talk about the most important phases. What is something that you watch for with your kickers or with your punters? And what's the most important phase when it comes to kicking?
Sure. For me, it's all about intentionality, body awareness, and a complete effort. I'll start backwards. Complete effort. If they're not finishing kicks, if they're not giving it a full effort, no matter what they're working on, training on, if they're trying a new recommended something in the course of a session, if they're not finishing it as if it's going to work, then they're doing what I call it compromising the drill. So first off, complete effort. Second, body awareness. The more aware a kicker is of his own body, his abs, his kicking side arm, how much it's not moving, his steps, his posture, his shoulders, all that. The more body aware you are, the better you're going to be. And intentionality. Does everything you do have a reason? From your jab step, drive step, plant step, swing, the way you swing, the way you finish, why? I can tell by watching a guy over a course of 10 kicks with how repeated he is or with how consistent he is. Is he giving full effort? Is he intentional with what he's doing? And is he aware of his body? Balance is a big part of that. But those are the things that I focus on the most.
Kevin, you'd be a great long snapping coach because that's the same stuff. Body awareness, intentionality. Hell yeah.
I'd probably have to study under you for like 6 years, but we could probably work it out.
And now, Kyle, how does intentionality show up in your world? Or I kind of have an idea with body awareness, but you can kind of come over the same stuff.
Yeah, basically, you can tell just by how somebody follows through with their hands. Like, are they being intentional with their throw? Or are they just kind of slinging it? So yeah, it's all the same stuff. I just love to keep jumping in and saying same stuff. Cool, keep it up.
Yeah, but I mean that is huge for those guys to understand that and be aware, conscientious of that. Kevin, what are ways that you drill that or you train that with your guys?
I like to use a Socratic approach if you're going to go teaching methods. I ask questions a lot. Hey, what did you feel there? Hey, what were you trying to do on that one? What was your target? Well, I don't have a target. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, what were you looking at when you took your side steps? Oh, I was looking at the target. Oh, funny, your feet didn't follow where they're supposed to go. I'm one of the guys, I stared at my feet walking sideways every step. Why? Because why not? It's an untimed part of the down. There's no one rushing. I mean, so there's no reason not to do things right. So my whole thing with asking questions is identifying understanding and creating an understanding of why things matter down, even if it takes down to the granularity. Because for most kids, they're getting so much information. They don't know what's allowable and what isn't to tune out. So eventually they just start picking and choosing, or worse, tuning it all out. You're out there for an hour kicking footballs. There's distractions going on. A lot of camps. There's other kickers around, things going on. So how do you focus? And the answer is if you know why you're taking that jab step or not taking a jab step if you're a two-stepper. If you're a guy that knows why you're planting a certain distance away from the ball. I know why I'm planting more than one of my own feet away from the ball because I'm 6 feet with a size 8.5 shoe. If I did that, I'd be too close, right? So understanding everything you do and why you do it, you definitely see it in the shape of a guy's football. How consistent is that shape? Are his miss hits? When you do a spray pattern of 20 kicks and you're seeing sporadic, I don't need to see the guy kick. I kind of have a visual of what that looks like. If I see all to one side or the other, then I want to see it on film because chances are there's a couple different things. But the reality is every person's imperfect. I mean, their body physique is going to create different things. So it takes kind of spending a little bit of time with the guy to figure out what cues work for him. And that's where being around for a long time and why, certain coaches' experience matters so much is how many ways have they heard it said? How many ways have they seen it done? And the reality is there's only so many ways to do it, but there's millions of ways to explain it. So what's going to work for your one kid? Well, if you're a coach who's only heard one language set or vernacular set for a certain set of terms, then you're going to face a lot more of those obstacles than someone that, has heard it, seen a bunch of different ways, or can relate it to other sports, or just likes to create some, metaphors with kicking.
And why do you say, when it's sporadic, you don't need to see it? Like, is it a fundamental thing, or what do you need to
I
see?
can do the
that, it's
same
just
thing with
if
a
it's that
snapper.
inconsistent.
That's awesome.
Well, if it's that inconsistent, then they're not doing any one thing that is creating that inconsistency. If it's that inconsistent, then they need to spend more time on the tried and true book fundamentals. They need to really get to know their craft. Too many kickers want to bring in their individuality and their style and ignore fundamental, because fundamental means that they actually have to be coached and wrong. Style is the crutch leaned on, usually when people don't want to accept failure or being corrected, or that they didn't do it right. It's a crutch a lot of times. And the funny enough thing is the people who do take the biggest style leniencies, the things they focus on the most are their fundamentals. Like you mentioned, Tucker, he's really dialed in on everything he does. He's a little wider than most. That long kick he made with that jab step, you would never teach, or that hop, crow hop, you would never teach that. But that's an adaptation he took and made. But you're not going to tell me he doesn't practice his fundamentals. Everything about his swing is fundamentally sound. Right. So, it's really about dialing into what's going to get them better first. And usually that's fundamentals.
Sounds like style and athleticism might be kind of intertwined here. And a lot of guys that just rely on that are just being an athlete instead of understanding the what, why, and how of it too.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot more athletes getting into kicking these days. A lot of pitchers crossing over, a lot of soccer. I mean, soccer's always been there, but a lot of baseball crossing over. One of my best punters was an outfielder. It's hitting, it's a swing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and tying that in is huge for them to learn, and a good way for them to digest it. All right, Kevin, well, this has been a great episode. I love diving into as Kyle says, it's not just theories, but philosophy of the snapping and the kicking, all that, right, Kyle?
Absolutely.
There you go. But it's fact. And so I want to kind of bring this home with the rapid fire section presented by the Kicker's Bible. Kevin, you ready for the rapid fire section? Bring it home. Okay. All right. I'm going to throw you out some excerpts, and Kyle, you can hop in on this too. Some different experiences, a short answer, or you can kind of divulge into it if you want to. Okay. This is the rapid fire section. What is the loudest stadium that you've ever been in? Kevin, we can start with you.
Ole Miss.
Did you guys ever have a moment, or an experience where things finally clicked, and can you name it, or can you say, what happened in that moment?
In my 58-yarder against Utah State, I mean, I went through, they called a timeout, tried to ice me. I went through my routine, swung my leg. I went back, I found my trigger, went through my routine, and everything felt smooth. Went through it with the snap. Snap was perfect. Hold was there. The ball came off my foot like I hit like a 30-yarder. And at first, I mashed it, but it felt like light. And then I look up, and it's like above the uprights, over halfway there. And I just start jumping up and down before it even reached its peak. And and afterwards, I hear from my teammates, they're like, we were wondering what the hell you were doing, because it was barely even off your foot. Oh, no, I knew that was through, yeah.
Knew that feeling. Absolutely. Kyle, did you have that moment?
I think my very first game in the UFL, I was on the sidelines throwing ducks. And my punter, Spencer Lanning, grabbed me by the face mask and in not a very polite way told me to lock it in. And at our very first punt snap, I had just thrown one in the dirt on the sideline, and they called punt, and I ran out there, and I just figured out, or just kind of learned, hey, shut up, throw the ball, turn your brain off. And it was probably my best snap. I've ever had. Covered the field, came off the field, and did fine after that. So part of it was just learning to not try so hard or care so much in the moment, and just kind of let what you've done take over. And that was a scary learning experience, but definitely something that needed to happen too.
Yeah. Let it take over. I love that. All right. How do you guys spot young talent in specialists? Is there a defining factor, or, what do you, whether, it's specific for a kicker or a punter? What do you think, Kevin?
I want to see how willing they are to be an athlete, like just to be the best that they can be. If I see a kid has like an eager approach to coaching, they ask questions, they want to take extra reps, they listen, to what you have to say, just the interaction in general, sincerity, that interest, that it's their interest. It's not mom and dad. It's not coach telling them you got to go see this guy. It's them wanting to be out there because they want to get better for themselves. Watch out. If they have any talent, watch out.
Honestly, I think I agree completely with you. So you could look for, I look for this height or this athleticism or anything else. But honestly, the kids that want to be there and put the time in, they're actually asking the questions and curious about it, no matter what level or skill level they're starting at, those guys are typically going to accelerate their learning a lot more rapidly than other guys.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The want to, the care. I love that. We kind of talked about the best, but I don't know, Kevin, do you have any examples of you're seeing teammates, whether it's at the college level or professional level, failure to handle criticism in the media and, ways they could have done it better?
And talking about examples of people doing things not well, I just tend to stick to my own. Gosh, I mean, there are plenty of those, post-game interviews where, you walked out there, you still take the interview because you made that commitment. That's what you're going to do. And the reality is your teammates just want you to make the kick. They don't want you to be on interviews, getting publicity for sucking. They just want you to make the kick. So with those sorts of things, just keep it simple, answer the question, get out of there, and try not to blame anybody. It happened a few times where I missed kicks. I don't know if I ever blamed anybody. I hope not. But that would just be my advice just from the start.
Yeah.
When you see that happen, I mean, you've seen interviews after games and you're just like, oh, his teammates, they're done. No more respect, and usually they're retired pretty quickly after that.
Now, I don't have any interview background. Nobody wants to interview the long snapper. So, Kevin,
that means you were good.
Yeah. Well, that means nobody cares to interview the long snapper. But when you're having an interview like that after whether a bad kick or just a poor performance, do you go into like the detail of why it happened, or do you just kind of, hey, it happened, man, let's move on?
Nope. Details or excuses.
Makes sense.
Here's the thing. Even if it's not, that's the perception, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, I guess even just for guys listening, like what should the script kind of be? Like, do I dig into like, oh, I slipped here, or I was thinking about something else, or I wasn't focused? Like,
but doesn't that all sound like they're making an excuse?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you went into detail, hey, I jabbed a little bit too far and I was too close to the ball and I wrapped my foot around the ball. Well, people are just going to say, make the kick. So I can totally
do all that. Why didn't you do it before,
Yeah.
It's just all the obvious things that reporters would normally try to go after, kind of like the common sense stuff. But it's like, hey, there's a lot of guys who like to explain that stuff and share why. And for a lot of kids, that's helpful to see, what even pros can do wrong. But from the perspective of accountability, which is for an after game experience where I wasn't successful, my whole thing's about taking accountability. So I'm not trying to, explain what happened, especially if I felt it wasn't my fault.
Yeah. That's good wisdom from you, Kevin. And Kyle, I think that's something we need to teach young specialists is, hey, how to own it, how to be deliberate. It's my fault, and I'll make the necessary changes, and we'll learn from this, or whatever.
Right. Well, and I'm just thinking too, as someone who's not given a lot of interviews, do I explain so they understand that I know what I did and I'm going to fix it? Or do I, just accept it and, hey, man, well, I'll be better, right? Like simple or complex. What do you want? And I'm sure they could attack you no matter what your answer is going to be anyway. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. All right, bringing it home here, guys. What is one piece of advice that you have for either, young specialists, maybe yourself, when you were going through this whole process or playing college ball? What would be one piece of advice that you would give?
Do it the right way, the best you can, as long as you can. And when you can't do it that way anymore, stop. I know guys that played football 2 years that got everything you could need to learn out of sports in those 2 years and never played again after high school. The character, the discipline, the work ethic, the appreciation for the sport. I know guys that played full professional careers, never got a thing out of it. They didn't learn discipline because they were too athletic to be held accountable by their younger coaches. They never learned work ethic because they never had to work hard enough to beat anyone out. And then when it came time to, it's politics, it's this, it's that. Work hard, do it the best you can. When you feel like you can no longer hang, keep doing it. When the game tells you it's done, it's done. But other than that, man, when your cleats are on the shelf, the last thing you want to think is, if I only would have. And that's, I came out of retirement after a 5-year stint just in case I still had it. And I got to play a few more years, and I'm glad I did. But, it's like, I know I did everything I could. I went to camps. I paid the fees. I did the travel. I competed with the best. I mean, my draft class I was 7 in my draft class. Top 5 were drafted. It was John Potter. It was Randy Bullock, Tucker, Hecker and Anger were in that class too on the punting side. There were 5 kickers drafted, and only Blair Walsh was in that draft class. Shout out to all those guys. They're all ballers. And it was stacked. And, and I was one of the only lefties. Giorgio Tavecchio was shortly after me, from Cal, another lefty, and he ended up being the premier lefty of the day. And then there were other free agents that came in, my draft year was the year that Håvard Rugland guy came in. He was a lefty from Norway. So any lefty opportunities that were out there, now I have an extra person to compete with. So the whole thing is, you never have any control of what you can control. I used to tell people that all the time. If I can control it, then I don't have to worry about it because it's up to me to control it. If I don't have any control of it, then I'm not going to worry about it, because even if I do, it's not going to change anything. So stop worrying, work harder, put in the work, be content with yourself. And if you're content with your own work, then you're going to have the confidence that you need. If you're not, work harder.
Yeah. And I guess for me, it's there's always another level. And that every opportunity you get to study the what, why, and how, I think is the best way to approach it too. So most guys just kind of feel like they're probably at the peak of their game, no matter what level they're at. There's always more. And just kind of opening guys' eyes to that, it can be kind of breakthrough as well.
Yeah, 100%. Well, a lot of wisdom shared on this podcast, man. A lot of philosophy. I love episodes like this. Kevin, thanks again for coming on. You got anything to plug? You got at KG Kicking, right?
Yeah, on Twitter and Instagram, both at KG Kicking. My last name's just too long. Kevin Goessling Kicking, but it's KG Kicking. Yeah. Here all throughout California. My family's in Southern California, and I'm in the Central Valley, so available all over.
Do you do virtual training as well?
I don't yet. My focus is on going from one-on-ones to camps and small groups at this time. But virtual training is something I want to do sooner than later. There's a lot of guys that do it really well already. I'd like to, see how that's done, see what's out there. But technology is awesome with that. Like I said, there's a lot of guys that do that really well already.
I think you'd be good at it.
I'd love to. Personally, here's the thing. My favorite thing is when my clients send me a text message. Here's 8 videos. And this is actually how I help more of my kickers than on the field. Because we're like doctors, right? Would you rather go in for a checkup or surgery? Because most of the time, kids come to practice expecting a checkup and needing surgery. So I'd rather them stay in touch, send videos, chat back and forth, and have that conversation, and let them come up with their own questions. Because it's extreme ownership, right? Taking full ownership and accountability of what you do, why you do it, and how you do it, just like you said, Kyle. The more they take ownership of what they do, it's funny how those guys always end up being the same ones that get good.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going surgery every day. I love surgery. But good stuff. No, it's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kyle, what do you got going on? You want to plug anything? You got anything happening?
Nah, not a lot happening right now. Honestly, I'm kind of in the heat of private sessions right now, so every day of the week's been pretty booked up. So it's awesome. Jacob Moyer from the Raiders was just here yesterday and the day before, so we were working. The rest of the week I'm booked. So if anybody wants to get in touch, they can find me on social media at Special Teams U. Otherwise, they can find my website, specialteamsu.com.
Yeah, check them out for the top snapping information out there, guys. Well, for the Iceman Podcast, everyone at the Iceman Podcast, and at Kyle Stelter at Special Teams U, that's been Kevin Goessling on the Iceman Podcast.
Thanks for listening. And make sure you give us a follow or a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Music if you're so inclined to do so. For any questions or suggestions on further guests, follow us at Iceman Coaching on Twitter or on Instagram, and check out our website, icemankicking.com, for updates and new talks and podcasts. Check out our TikTok for the best clips of the newest episodes. Tune in next week for another awesome guest. I'm Brett Arkellian, and for everyone at the Iceman Podcast, so long and stay cool under pressure.
Roll another one 'cause I'm winning.